Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are scrapping into the cockpit, so to speak, on a really compelling modern dilemma in military procurement.
Yeah, it's a big one. We're looking at the fight for the skies, really, between two totally different ideas about air power.
Exactly. We're going to try and cut through the sales talk and the tech specs to answer something that puzzles a lot of people. Budget analysts, military planners, you name it.
Which is, why is the American F-35 Lightning Tessity, stealthy, complex, notoriously high maintenance, why is it outselling the Swedish Saab Gripen E? The Gripen seems like the smart, cost-effective, rugged choice.
Right. That's the core paradox we need to unpack for you today. On one side, you've got the F-35 fifth-gen tech dominance, U.S.-led. One source we looked at called it the bulky people carrier.
Yeah. Not exactly built for nimble dogfighting, more for that networked, stealthy presence deep in enemy airspace.
And then the underdog. Sweden's Gripen E, it's really the definition of a 4.5-gen fighter. That same source called it the stripped-down scrambler.
I like that description. Built for speed, Mark II capability, operational flexibility, and, supposedly affordability.
Supposedly. So our mission today is a deep dive into the sources explaining why countries, and this is the kicker, even smaller nations with pretty low GDPs, are choosing the F-35.
Despite its complexity, yeah. The answer, as we found, isn't just about the tech specs. It goes way deeper into things like operational cost, technological sovereignty, or maybe the lack of it, and just the raw gravity of geopolitics.
It's that initial paradox you mentioned that really caught our eye. Why are countries that really need to watch every single penny opting for the jet, famous for having, well, arguably the highest running costs out there?
Exactly. Common sense says budget-conscious nations go Swedish, right?
Right.
But the market, the actual sales figures, show that calculation is, well, fundamentally flawed. Something much bigger is going on than just the sticker price.
So defining the rivals really means defining different defense strategies altogether.
Totally. The Gripen E, it comes from Sweden's Cold War thinking, Rapid response, survivability, operating from anywhere. It's about advanced electronic warfare, low maintenance, being able to disperse your forces.
And the F-35.
Oh, that's all about stealth. Very low observability, VLO. Advanced networking, revolutionary sensor fusion. It's built to dominate that beyond visual range fight by seeing you, tracking you, and shooting you down long before you even know it's there.
Okay, Let's unpack this then. And let's start with the money, because this is where that popular idea of the F-35 being, prohibitively expensive just completely falls apart. It really sets the stage. For years, everyone said the Gripen was the affordable option. But the sources, well, they paint a much more complicated picture now, mainly because of a huge shift in acquisition cost.
Yeah, the game totally changed on the flyaway price. You gotta remember, the F-35 program started off with just astronomical price tags, like upwards of $142 million per plane back at the start. Terrifyingly expensive.
Okay.
But here's the key thing. The sheer number of orders, the economies of scale, plus the fact that the U.S. government, meaning the U.S. taxpayer, already paid for the massive R&D, the design work, setting up the factories, all that heavy lifting was done.
Okay. So international buyers are kind of getting a discount because the U.S. already absorbed those huge initial costs.
Pretty much, yeah. The U.S. government essentially socialized the R&D onto its own defense budget, so international customers. They're just buying units off an already running, highly optimized, you could almost say subsidized, assembly line.
It's like the U.S. bought the first, 10,000 copies of some super complex software, and now they're selling licenses to allies at a huge discount.
That's a good analogy, actually. The current F-35A unit price, that's the conventional takeoff one, it's now reliably down between, say, $77 million and $82 million. Depends on the specific production lot, but still.
77 to 82 million. That is surprisingly competitive for a fifth-gen jet.
Astonishingly competitive. And then you look at the Gripen E. The sources we checked cite its flyaway unit price right around $85 million.
$85 million. So wait, the Gripen E might actually cost more to buy up front than a brand new F-35A.
It's possible, yeah. That old idea, F-35 is too expensive to buy. Totally obsolete now. Lockheed Martin, backed by the U.S. government's financial power, they strategically priced the F-35 to compete directly with or even beat modern 4.5-gen jets like the Gripen or the French Rafale.
So the U.S. industrial base itself is being used as a strategic weapon in the export market, subsidized by the taxpayer.
You got it. And that flips the script, right? If the purchase price is roughly the same or even lower for the F-35.
And the choice seems obvious. Why buy a 4.5-gen fighter when you can get 5th-gen capability for the same money?
Exactly. But And this is a huge but, that affordability is an illusion. It leads us straight into the real financial killer, the long-term expense that dictates whether an air force can actually function.
The cost per flight hour, CPFH.
Bingo, the acquisition price. Deceptive. It's a one-off payment. It's roughly only a third of the plane's total lifespan cost.
Right.
The other two-thirds, that's the running tab. Maintenance, fuel, upgrades. That's what bankrupts air forces if you're not careful. And this is where the F-35's cost is just, well, one source said, in a whole other league.
Okay, let's put some numbers on this because the difference is kind of staggering. Gripen E, the frugal flyer. What are we talking?
Estimates are remarkably low, ranges from about $4,700, maybe up to $8,000 per flight hour. We even saw a 2012 IHS Janes paper looking at the older CD version.
Yeah.
It clocked in at $4,700 an hour. Lowest of all Western fighters they studied back then, that's efficiency. Almost any smaller air force could sustain that kind of operational tempo.
Okay, $4,700 to $8,000 for the Gripen. Now,
Yeah.
the F-35A.
The budget breaker.
Yeah, hold on to your hat. The U.S. Department of Defense direct cost estimate for fiscal year 2020, a whopping $42,000 per
42,000. 42,000. And even back in 2012, the Australians, the RAAF, were estimating $21,000. Some estimates go as high as $33,300 or more. Even the most optimistic F-35 number is still, what, 4, 5, maybe 10 times the cost of flying a Gripen for an hour?
Just to give that $42,000 number some context for you listening.
Yeah.
The old reliable F-16 CD, that's around $25,400 an hour. The French Rafale, maybe around $20,000, so similar ballpark. The F-35 isn't just pricier than the Gripen. It's way more expensive than even the legacy jets it's replacing.
Oh, yeah. And we know where a chunk of that cost comes from, just starting with fuel. The F-35A is a big bird with a powerful engine. It drinks about 5,600 liters. That's 4,400 kilos of JP8 fuel every hour.
Okay.
Even if you lowball the fuel cost, say $0.80 a liter, which is probably generous, that's almost $4,500 just for gas, just for 60 minutes in the air.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. The F-35 burns through the Gripen's entire minimum operating cost, the whole $4,700 CPFH, just on fuel. Before you even think about spare parts, maintenance software, specialized mechanics.
Precisely. Just the fuel cost alone matches the Gripen's total minimum cost. And that high consumption has huge knock-on effects.
Like what?
Well, high CPFH means you just can't afford to fly as much. If you operate F-35s, especially as a smaller nation, you simply cannot train your pilots as many hours per year as an Air Force flying Gripens. Every hour costs a fortune.
So you risk creating a pilot experience gap. Less stick time.
Potentially, yeah. Especially if you're not constantly involved in high-tempo operations where those hours are mandated, it's a real constraint.
So the implication for buyers is huge. F-35 looks cheap up front, relatively speaking. But the long-term running costs make the Gripen E what one source called a beacon of affordability in sustained operations.
Especially for nations needing high flight hours without bottomless budgets. Think about Hungary or the Czech Republic. They initially leased the older Gripen CDs specifically because the low operating costs let them get a NATO-compatible fighter without breaking their national bank.
Okay, so the core money tension is clear. F-35 wins on the initial sticker price, thanks to U.S. scale and subsidy. But the Gripen absolutely dominates the 4-decade running tab.
Which forces that massive strategic question. What capability justifies spending $42,000 every single hour you're in the air?
And that capability, as you said, has to be that whole seeing first network dominance philosophy. It's fascinating how these different technologies really drive the strategic choices nations make.
It really is. The F-35 is built from the ground up to deliver its edge through stealth and sensor fusion. The whole airframe shape, the materials, the internal weapons bays, it's all designed for very low observability.
That tiny radar cross-section, like a bumblebee or something.
Exactly. So it can get deep inside contested airspace where a 4.5 gen jet like the Gripen with stuff hanging off its wings just wouldn't survive. That VLO is the game changer in a high-end fight.
And it's not just being hard to see, right? It's how it processes information.
Yeah.
Lockheed talks about active sensor management and autonomous sensor fusion. What does that actually mean for the pilot?
It means the F-35 is basically a flying supercomputer with wings. It's not just passively getting tracks from its radar, its infrared sensors, its data links like older jets. It's actively fusing all that data.
Fusing how?
The computers manage everything. They decide which sensor is best for the job at that moment. They combine the radar picture, the 360-degree infrared view from the Distributed Aperture System, DAEF, the electronic warfare info, data from other F-35s via its special data link, MADL, And they present the pilot with one single, unified, simplified tactical picture.
Simplified. That sounds like information overload.
Well, that's the goal of the fusion, to prevent overload. The pilot sees the result, not the raw data streams, and they see it mainly through their helmet.
Oh, the fancy helmet.
Yeah, it's the primary display. Puts the fused picture right onto the visor, lets the pilot literally look through the floor of the jet using the DAS cameras, or target something just by looking at it. This sensor management, one source called it the best avionics suite in the world, basically means the F-35 pilot knows what's happening much earlier and with more certainty.
So, back to that hypothetical fight. F-35 versus Gripen E, F-35 likely wins. Not because it's more agile, but because it sees first.
That's the consensus, yeah. Sources actually suggest the Gripen, with its Mach 2 speed and agility, might be better in a classic close-in dogfight if it ever got that close.
But the F-35's tech makes sure it doesn't get that close.
Right. If you can detect the enemy at, say, 100 miles, and they can only reliably detect you at 30 miles, the fight's potentially over before it starts. The F-35 detects, tracks, launches missiles long before the Gripen pilot even knows they're being targeted. It's that old saying, lose the sight, lose the fight. That's the F-35's whole reason for being. Stealth enables that BVR dominance.
Okay, but the Gripen E isn't just, rolling over. It's got its own tech plan focused more on electronic warfare, right? Trying to counter that stealth edge.
Absolutely. It knows it doesn't have true VLO like the F-35. So while it does have a reduced radar cross-section compared to older jets, its main defense is a really advanced gallium nitride-based electronic warfare suite.
Gallium nitride, that's cutting-edge stuff for EW.
Very. And it's not just about basic jamming, it's about deception. The EW system is designed to identify enemy radars, even advanced ones like Russia's S-400 system, and then generate false targets, mess with their range finding, basically confuse and blind the enemy's sensors and targeting systems.
How effective is that against something like an F-35, though, which is already designed to fuse data and reject clutter?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's an ongoing technological race. The Gripen's EW is likely very effective against older threats and powerful ground radars. It's designed to help it survive where it can't hide. But even the best EW can't completely hide the physical reality that the Gripen carries weapons externally, which inherently increases its radar signature, unlike the F-35's internal bays.
So, different survival strategies. F-35 hides, Gripen tries to electronically dazzle and run.
Pretty much. And that difference in philosophy extends to how they handle the pilot, too. Saab calls their approach human-machine collaboration.
Right, you mentioned that. How's that different for the F-35's autonomous sensor fusion?
Saab's focus is on keeping the pilot's workload low and constant. They use automation, AI, machine learning, yes, but mainly as an assistant to reduce the cognitive load, to get rid of what they called that frantic switchology pilots used to deal with.
So the automation handles the system management.
Yeah, it tunes the sensors, manages the EW suite automatically so the pilot can focus purely on tactics, maneuvering, situational awareness, rather than being buried head down managing the jet systems.
Interesting. And the Gripen still packs a punch in terms of weapons? It's not just defensive?
Oh, definitely. It carries the Meteor missile. You see that cited again and again as maybe the best air-to-air missile out there right now. Huge range, ramjet powered for sustained speed.
So it does have a credible beyond visual range capability itself.
It does. It's not helpless in a BVR fight, but again, it's fighting uphill against the F-35's ability to remain undetected while employing its own long-range weapons.
So the tension is really stark. F-35 maximizes the chance of a clean, undetected kill in heavily defended airspace. Gripen maximizes the ability to generate lots of sorties affordably from anywhere, relying on agility and EW if things get hot.
And that difference leads us right from the tech into the operational reality, the logistics.
Ah, yes. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Because buying the jet means buying the whole support system. And the F-35's requirements highlight a completely different defense philosophy compared to the Gripen's sort of rugged simplicity.
Oh, absolutely. The F-35 logistics chain, it's a masterclass in complexity. And crucially, it mandates dependency on the vendor, on Lockheed Martin and the U.S. system. It relies on these incredibly complex computerized maintenance systems. You often hear about the first one, ALIS.
ALIS, Autonomic Logistics Information System. That one got a pretty bad reputation, didn't it?
Understatement. One source we read just called it a complete bitch.
Huh. Okay, why? What was the problem for air forces using it?
ALIS was supposed to automate everything. Diagnose problems, order parts, schedule maintenance. Sounds great, right? But in reality, it was a logistical nightmare. It would frequently fail, it would flag perfectly good parts as faulty grounding jets, or it would demand replacements for parts that weren't even available in the supply chain yet.
So the computer system itself was stopping perfectly good planes from flying.
Routinely. Immense frustration for maintainers and commanders. Fleets grounded not by enemy action, but by buggy software. It was basically dependency by algorithm.
And ALIS has been replaced now, or is being replaced, by Odin Operational Data Integrated Network. But does that change the fundamental dependency?
Not really, no. The underlying principle remains. The F-35 is not designed for autonomous national support. In fact, the system requires the aircraft to check into Lockheed every couple months or so.
Check in, like phone home.
Essentially, yeah. It's a mandatory data transfer.
Right.
The jet uploads its diagnostic data, its operational logs, back to Lockheed Martin's central network. If it doesn't make that connection, if it doesn't check in,
It won't fly. Seriously.
that's the rule. It's a direct contractual and technological leash. It ensures you stick to the support contracts and, let's be blunt, it ensures you remain U.S. friendly. Change your foreign policy alignments too drastically. Theoretically, your multi-billion-dollar F-35 fleet could be grounded by a missed software update or data upload.
Wow, that's a significant string attached. And beyond the software, there are physical, real-world costs tied to this dependency.
Huge indirect costs, often missed in the initial budget calculations. The F-35 needs extensive maintenance and in highly controlled environments. You can't just fix it in a normal hangar, especially with the stealth coatings.
You need special facilities, climate control.
Exactly, to protect the sensitive coatings and the electronics. Building and maintaining those specialized depots adds enormous annual costs. Some European partners estimated it between like $1.5 million and $2 million per aircraft per year, just for the hangar upkeep and the support environment.
And spare parts, that's another dependency point.
Right. Critical one. Nearly 70% of F-35 spare parts are proprietary. Only Lockheed or approved suppliers make them. So industrial dependency is pretty much absolute.
If they don't make it, you don't get it.
And the costs are astronomical. That source mentioned a main landing gear assembly costing nearly $180,000.
Ouch.
So if you fall out of favor with the U.S., or even if there's just a bottleneck in their supply chain, your whole fleet could be grounded waiting for a single, unique, expensive part. It locks in that high CPFH.
Okay, so that's the F-35. Complex, costly, dependent. Now, contrast that with the Gripen E. It's designed for the exact opposite, right? Simplicity, flexibility, autonomy.
Completely. The Gripen's design philosophy goes back to Sweden's Cold War BAS-90 system. The idea was, assume your main air bases get wiped out on day one. Where do you fly from then?
Dispersal.
Exactly. So the Gripen had to be able to operate from very short runways, like 800 meters, or even just sections of reinforced highway or packed snow strips in the north. Unmatched flexibility, vital if you're defending huge, sparsely populated areas. Think Canada's Arctic or Brazil's interior.
So the Gripen isn't just cheaper to fly hour by hour. It's designed to be resilient, keep flying even when things go really bad from places the F-35 wouldn't dream of operating from.
And the maintenance reflects that. It's legendary for its simplicity and speed. That turnaround time, land, refuel, rearm, ready to go again, cited as little as 10 minutes in some configurations.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. And the maintenance crew, famously small, like one professional technician and maybe 5 conscripts, working out of a standard shipping container with the necessary parts and tools. That's operational resilience baked right into the design. You buy Gripen, you buy the ability to keep fighting even if your main bases are craters.
That simplicity must also affect how they handle upgrades.
It does. Sweden has a different approach. Instead of those huge multi-year deep overhaul upgrades that often ground entire fleets in other countries, they prefer smaller, modular, but much more frequent upgrades, maybe 5 times as often. They're constantly integrating new software, tweaking sensors, adding capabilities, but without taking the whole fleet offline for years. It keeps their engineers sharp and maintains a sort of continuous incremental edge.
Okay, so the picture is incredibly clear now. F-35. Peak performance, but high cost, complex logistics, and mandated dependency. Gripen. Rugged, flexible, autonomous in operation, affordable to run. Given those stark differences, especially on cost and flexibility, Why is the F-35 still outselling it so dramatically?
Right. That brings us back to the core puzzle. And if you connect all these dots, the biggest single reason the Gripen isn't selling better isn't technical. It's not really operational either. It's fundamentally political.
Politics, and specifically the power of the U.S. defense industry and government.
It boils down significantly to something called the ITAR veto, U.S. International Traffic in Arms Regulations. This gives Washington a strategic chokehold over the Swedish jet.
How so? What's the connection?
It's the engine. The heart of the Gripen E is the American General Electric F414 GE39E engine, the fantastic, reliable engine used in the Super Hornet, too.
Okay.
But because that critical component is made in the U.S. and subject to U.S. export laws, the entire Gripen E aircraft falls under ITAR. Meaning Washington gets the final say. They can veto any Gripen sale to any country, regardless of Sweden's relationship with that buyer, regardless of what Saab offers. Even if Sweden and the buyer have a perfect deal lined up, local production, tech transfer, everything, the U.S. can just say no to exporting the engine.
So the promise of sovereignty, of getting away from U.S. dependency by buying Swedish, it's kind of undermined by the American engine sitting in the back.
That's the critical vulnerability, the Achilles heel. The sources give us clear examples. Look at Colombia around 2025. Saab put together a great package tech transfer, local industry work, exactly what a country like Colombia wants.
Yeah.
The deal reportedly fell apart because word got out the U.S. was planning to block the F414 engine export. End of deal. Colombia had to look elsewhere.
And there are other examples too, right? Argentina.
Argentina is a complex case. They can't buy Gripens, partly because the UK blocks other key components due to the Falklands legacy. But even if the UK issue was resolved, the US engine hurdle would still be there. It's a major barrier.
So for a country genuinely seeking strategic autonomy, the ability to use and maintain their own military kit without asking a foreign power for permission, the Gripen doesn't actually deliver that.
It's what some analysts call the Gripen illusion. It looks like an independent choice, but the dependency on the U.S. industrial base is still baked in, just routed via Stockholm instead of directly from Fort Worth. Buying Swedish doesn't actually free you from American leverage because of that engine.
Okay, let's flip that. When a country does choose the F-35, they're buying more than just a plane, aren't they? They're buying into the whole U.S. system.
Oh, absolutely. They are buying immediate, explicit alignment with a nuclear superpower. Choosing the F-35 is a huge geopolitical statement. It signals commitment to NATO standards, interoperability, the whole U.S. security umbrella.
And that alignment comes with perks that Sweden just can't offer.
Exactly. Things like foreign military sales, FMS financing deals, which make the purchase easier. Access to wider U.S. military aid packages. Favorable economic incentives tied to the deal. Joining the F-35 club brings significant strategic and economic leverage that a smaller country like Sweden or even France simply can't match.
So you're not just getting stealth. You're getting geopolitical insurance, maybe priority in the NATO supply chain, better financing. Buying Gripen, as one source put it, is basically just getting Gripen.
Right. You get a great plane, maybe even cheaper to run, but you still need that U.S. permission slip for the engine, and you don't get the huge geopolitical embrace that comes with buying America's top jet.
Plus, going back to the cost, because the U.S. taxpayer already paid for the R&D.
Smaller nations get arguably the best multi-role jet in the world at a price comparable to the Gripen, as one analysis put it. They accept the long-term running costs and the dependency strings because the geopolitical benefit, that explicit alignment with Washington, is seen as overwhelmingly valuable.
So the F-35 makes the dependency explicit but potentially beneficial. The Gripen kind of obscures the dependency, but doesn't eliminate it, and lacks the geopolitical upside.
That's a good way to put it. Which brings us to the countries that did choose Gripen. They must have had very specific reasons to navigate those hurdles or prioritize other factors.
Right. They weren't just looking at capability versus cost in a vacuum. They were making a deliberate strategic choice, often prioritizing things the F-35 can't offer.
Exactly. Look at Brazil. They picked 36 Gripen EFs. Their decision was all about long-term industrial independence. They made technology transfer and local co-production with their own aerospace champion, Embraer, the absolute top priority.
That's something Saab was willing to do that Lockheed likely wouldn't entertain for the F-35, sharing the blueprints, basically.
Saab is much more open to it. They run extensive knowledge transfer programs, training Brazilian engineers, helping build up Brazil's own defense industrial base. The long-term goal for Brazil isn't just to fly Gripens, it's to gain the capability to eventually design and build their own next-generation fighters, reducing foreign dependency altogether.
A path made possible by choosing the partner willing to share the knowledge.
Precisely. For other countries like Hungary and the Czech Republic, the initial choice of leased Gripen CDs was pragmatic. Get a capable NATO interoperable fighter quickly and affordably, bolstering air defenses without wrecking their national budgets. Low running cost was key.
So the Gripen clearly still has a strong appeal for certain niches. Smaller air forces, constrained budgets, nations prioritizing industrial development over pure fifth-gen capability, offering, as someone said, 80% of the F-75's capability at a fraction of the cost to operate.
Definitely. It's flexible, rugged, affordable to fly, which naturally fuels that whole debate about mixed fleets, especially in places like Canada.
Ah, the mixed fleet idea. F-35s for the high-end fight, and something cheaper like Gripen or Rafale for the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, given the F-35's massive running costs and complexity, some argue it's overkill for routine missions, like patrolling the vast Canadian Arctic. Is a $42,000 an hour stealth jet the best tool for that?
Proponents would say the Gripen is perfect for that, designed for cold weather, austere basing, much cheaper to operate. Why burn F-35 hours on sovereignty patrols?
Makes sense on paper, but the counter-argument from logistics folks is strong. Running two separate fighter fleets, that means two supply chains, two training pipelines, two sets of specialized mechanics, two different types of hangars. It often ends up being more expensive overall than just standardizing on one type, even if that type is pricey per hour.
Plus the strategic argument.
That in today's world, especially within NATO, if you don't have a credible fifth-gen capability, you risk not being taken seriously when the chips are really down.
That pressure to have fifth-gen and the reliance on the U.S. F-35 for it brings us to the whole issue of European defense sovereignty, doesn't it? It's driving huge projects over there.
Absolutely. Right now, who in Europe can design and build a complete cutting-edge fighter system from scratch? Basically, only Sweden with Saab and France with Dassault. Everyone else is reliant, to some degree, on partners or buying off the shelf, usually from the U.S.
And that reliance fuels these massive, complex, often politically fraught European fighter programs.
Exactly. You've got the Franco-German-Spanish SCAF project and the rival UK-led Tempest program involving Italy and Japan now, too. Huge investments, lots of debate.
But the fundamental goal of both is the same.
Pretty much. To ensure Europe develops and maintains its own strategic autonomy in combat air. To minimize dependency on the U.S. for the next generation of fighters, especially seeing how the F-35 program locks allies into decades of U.S. supply chains, software control, and ITAR constraints. They want to build the next fighter that doesn't need a U.S. engine or U.S. permission to sell.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. What have we found in this deep dive?
Well, the trade-offs are pretty stark, aren't they? The F-35 gives you absolutely unmatched tech capability, stealth, sensors, networking, and surprisingly, a low upfront purchase price thanks to those U.S. subsidies. Plus, crucially, that geopolitical integration with the U.S. and NATO.
But the cost is enormous long-term commitment. That $42,000 an hour running tab, complex logistics, the whole Alisodan dependency, and ultimately a near-total loss of technological sovereignty. The mandated check-ins, the proprietary parts.
Right. Then you have the Gripen E superior operational affordability, that incredibly low CPFH, amazing flexibility for dispersed, austere operations, great for smaller air forces, big territories, tight budgets, especially if they value industrial cooperation like Brazil did.
And ironically, despite being the independent choice, it doesn't deliver full strategic autonomy because of that U.S. engine and the ever-present threat of the ITAR veto blocking sales.
So we end up with this really fundamental philosophical question for military planners, and maybe for you listening if you follow defense policy. The F-35 is technologically the superior fighter in a head-to-head high-end fight. No question. The stealth and sensors give it the edge.
But countries like Brazil chose Gripen specifically to gain industrial self-reliance, to escape foreign dependency. Which forces the question, in the 21st century, what's more important? Raw battlefield capability, or the absolute guarantee that you have continuous operational control over your own hardware?
Yeah, think about it. If the nation that sold you the plane can, theoretically, remotely influence its operation, ground it via software updates, deny you an engine export license, or just hold back a critical $180,000 spare part, how truly capable or sovereign is your Air Force, really?
That risk of dependency, maybe even more than the stealth gap, might be the biggest strategic vulnerability a nation takes on.
And that vulnerability, that desire for real control, is exactly what's driving Europe's multi-billion-euro push for its own next-generation fighters today. It's a fascinating dynamic.